A trade for Aaron Rodgers. We got 2 seconds. Who wants to answer this?
Yes! Yes, yes, yes!
All right, here we go. So the Patriots are going to get Aaron Rodgers.
This is SportsCenter.
The key games for your favorite NFL team next season. The when, the why, and the star matchups you won't want to miss. Plus, the state of Oregon says no major events through September. Wait until you hear what Alabama's AD has to say about the future of college football. And some NBA players are back in team facilities right now. What does that mean for the start of the NBA season? Woj joins us now on SportsCenter.
The main event is going to be insane.
They lost the football. Are you kidding me?
I kind of already want to apologize to Mark Sanchez.
Right away.
I thought that would be done by now, but It's not. Whether you realize it or not, another week is in the books. Al Duncan and Matt Berry here to usher in the weekend. And in a minute, we'll play the game of my team will go 12-4 because I just looked at their schedule.
Preseason confidence is undefeated. We're going to start in the NBA, though, where some practice facilities are starting to open in cities where stay-at-home restrictions have been lifted, like in Denver, where the Nuggets facility will open today, despite the fact that most players are not in the city, at least according to the Denver Post. The Cavs and Trailblazers also opening their facilities today. They'll reportedly only allow one player and a developmental coach wearing a mask and gloves to be permitted at the same basket.
We have a live event and a main event for UFC 249 Saturday night in Jacksonville. Now official after the lightweight contenders Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje both made weight today for their interim title bout. 155 was the weight limit, 155 pounds. Co-main event competitors champion Henry Cejudo and challenger Dominic Cruz also made the 135-pound limit for their bantamweight title bout.
How about IndyCar? They'll open its season on June 6th at Texas Motor Speedway without fans in attendance. The series announced yesterday the Genesis 300 has been adjusted to just 200 laps to accommodate the one-day event.
The National Hockey League is postponing its 2020 international games due to the coronavirus. The NHL and the Players Association said they plan to hold games overseas in 2021. Now, the NHL's current season has been on pause for nearly 2 months due to the pandemic, though the league is trying to find a way to resume play this summer.
Let's see the biggest news over the last 24 hours or so. Opening night, we did get our NFL schedule release yesterday, so we'll kind of give you the Cliff Notes version of what went down. There's a lot of primetime games going around. 8 teams have a league-high 5 such games in 2020. That includes the Ravens, Chiefs, and Buccaneers. Tampa, the only team not over 500 last season. Speaking of 500, Cincy was nowhere near it in 2019. In turn, they got Joe Burrow, who will likely debut Week 1 versus the Chargers. The last 12 quarterbacks taken first overall are winless in their first start, and losses might come often for teams with the toughest schedules. New England tops the list according to 2019 opponent win percentage. The Patriots followed by the Jets, the Finns, and then the Niners. And while San Francisco has the 4th toughest schedule, they also travel the 3rd most miles in 2020. First and second most also belong to NFC West teams. That would, of course, be the Seahawks and the Rams. And finally, Super Bowl MVP quarterbacks Tom Brady and Drew Brees. I'm so pumped for this. They'll face each other in the very first game. It's the first game between these two. 4 other title game MVP signal callers this season, according to Elias. It's never happened.
Being 40 is fun in the NFL. Super Bowl 54 MVP Patrick Mahomes just talked about a second ago the Chiefs. They're going to host the Texans on opening night. Star power there, including our Louis Riddick. Louis, how challenging will the first month of the season be for Mahomes and the defending champs?
Well, it'll be extremely challenging. Look, the Texans are not a throwaway game. The Texans had the Chiefs on the ropes last year, as we all know, until Pat Mahomes just absolutely showed why he is the future at the quarterback position. Then when you look at going to the Chargers and to the Ravens, I mean, that's just 2 dramatic swings, one on the West Coast, one on the East Coast. And when you're talking about the Ravens on a Monday night game there, Week 3, look, you guys have already alluded to it. You have really the 2 preeminent quarterbacks in the NFL, totally different styles in terms of how they play the game, but nevertheless 2 heavyweights at the position and 2 heavyweights as far as their respective teams in the NFL. And then the Patriots at home. You know, look, I don't care if Jarrett Stidham's playing quarterback or Tom Brady's playing quarterback. Bill Belichick will have that team ready to go. So right out of the gate in that first month of the season, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be tested, but you're talking about a veteran football team that is coming back largely intact, has added some fortification on offense, really with Clyde Edwards-Helaire at running back, which personally, I believe makes their offense illegal. Somebody should be arrested down there in Kansas City for getting that kind of weapon to go along with who they already have. Look, this team is set up for another run, but they're going to have to prove their mettle here in the first month of the season for sure.
You know, we look at the schedule, we try to find certain trends. Chiefs the only team with 4 sets of back-to-back road games this season, but which team do you believe has an even tougher slate to start the season, and why?
Well, I think the New England Patriots have a tough slate to start the season by virtue of the fact that they play some very good football teams. Look, they're going to Seattle and to Kansas City on the road within the first 4 weeks, and they're going there with a lot of uncertainty surrounding the offensive side of the ball, namely at quarterback, and again, because of the aforementioned Jarrett Stidham. Now, look, Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels, offensive coordinator, believe in Jarrett, but we just don't know yet what he's going to do, although I, for one, believe he is going to have a heck of a season. And then after that, you know, when you look at their bye week coming after week 5, and then you have San Francisco and at Buffalo, I mean, look, that first month and a half of the season, it's a tough one. I mean, they have so many different types of teams they're going to have to deal with. Seattle and that raucous crowd up there in Seattle, the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes, the Raiders and the Broncos and their new offensive weapons that they have, speed all over the place. And then San Francisco and Buffalo. You know San Francisco is going to harass Jarrett Stidham, and Buffalo plays one of the best types of defenses against New England that any team does. And Josh Allen, hey, he has a lot on his plate this year, and the expectations are high. So New England, as they always have to do, they're always going to have to prove themselves, and this year is going to be no different considering how the first 7 weeks of their season are going to play out.
Yeah, the toughest schedule based on opponents' 2019 winning percentage. Lewis back with the most challenging part of the schedule for Tom Brady and the Bucs. Still sounds odd. Those are the facts. Louis Riddick back in just a bit. Now, we talk about contingency plans for the NFL. First, the season can start on any given week. That said, if the season is delayed, early week games can be added after week 17. This based on the contingency plans with the pandemic. And if that happens, the Super Bowl could also be pushed back. Every team also shares the same bye as their week 2 opponent. This could help with rescheduling games mid-season.
I'm sorry.
Still ahead on SportsCenter.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm trying to deep tease.
Yeah, I see.
Lou returns with how Tom Brady, the Tampa Patriots, and their schedule works out for them.
You have me saying that a lot now.
There you go. Now your turn.
Well, the NBA announced last month that May 8th would be the earliest day to reopen team practice facilities for player workouts. 3 teams are opening today. That's the Cavs, the Trailblazers, and Nuggets. But the league did set rules and guidelines to allow for safe and controlled environments. And to say that their safety protocols are a bit stringent is an understatement. So players have to show up dressed for workouts because there will be no use of locker rooms, and only 4 players and 6 development coaches are allowed in the facility at a time. Coaches have to stay 12 feet away and also wear a mask and gloves. And finally, temperature checks for everyone as they enter the facilities. For more, we bring in our NBA insider, Adrian Wojnarowski. So, Woj, what more can you tell us about the logistics that are surrounding the reopening of these facilities?
The teams are very curious about how many players who are still in market in these cities as they open up will decide to make this a regular part of their routine, because as you just described, extreme measures to go into a facility with an hour time limit on the court to do the most basic thing you can do: dribble the ball around, shoot at a basket, essentially alone or with a staff member, because they know that there are players who are finding other avenues to play basketball, whether it's home gyms, whether they're sneaking over to a high school gym that's been open for them and they don't have to go through all of these protocols. I think the question is going to be for teams, how impactful is this reopening of facilities going to be here in the near term, when there still is no this isn't tied to a return to play or the start of a training camp that is coming, because the league hasn't decided yet on a resumption of play.
And there certainly won't be any scrimmages allowed either. Let's talk about today, because NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and NBPA Executive Director Michelle Roberts are actually holding a conference call with all of the NBA players. So what are you hearing is going to be addressed during this call?
This was a union scheduled call. They invited Adam Silver to come on, talk to the players directly. I know there are a lot of executives in the league, general managers, who like the idea of Adam Silver talking directly to their players. They feel like the players need to hear from him. This is going to be a Q&A. This is going to be a chance for players who might not otherwise have access to Adam Silver to be able to ask questions in a forum. I don't expect there's going to be any revelations on the call with Adam Silver, with Michelle Roberts. Adam Silver does a lot of these calls with his owners, with different committees, with his general managers, and he has been very limited in what he has shared about contingencies, plans. You know, he's kept that very close within his inner circle in the league office.
And at least publicly, he's been very vocal about the fact that he can't do anything until he knows what's happening. And in this world, we currently don't know what's going on. But as we do know, Cavs, Blazers, Nuggets opened up their facilities today. Kings, Raptors plan to do so on Monday. Adrian Wojnarowski, thanks for joining us here.
Thanks, Al.
We are just getting started on this edition of SportsCenter. What is the current thinking among some in college football? Just wait till you hear what the Alabama athletic director had to say. Plus, we continue to look at the NFL schedules and why Brady's toughest task in Tampa may come earlier than he's ready for. We're off and running. It's a nooner. This is SportsCenter.
Still ahead, everybody picked on Jimmy G after the Niners lost in the Super Bowl, and Stephen A is having none of that, and he's going to put an end to the debate. His animated reaction is ahead on SportsCenter.
All right, so many questions surrounding sports, perhaps none bigger than the return of college athletics this fall. At the top of that list, college football. Will campuses be open? How long will players need to get ready for a full season? Will there be a full season? And how much time do administrators have to come up with a decision or solution? Laura Rutledge spoke with Alabama Athletic Director Greg Byrne yesterday as all of those dilemmas sit on his desk.
Our focus is to go have a full fall sports season, not just football, but soccer and volleyball and cross country and other sports that participate in the fall. And that's been our focus. Now, you manage and think about different scenarios that could happen if we have some challenges as far as not being able to start when we'd like to, but we're still, only in the first week of May. And the thing I've said is, none of us have a crystal ball, and we don't have to make that decision right now. We have to prepare for the fall, and then we will adjust when we need to.
I want to welcome in Laura Rutledge, co-host Get Up and SEC Network. Laura, what did Alabama AD Greg Byrne tell you about their plan with regards to fans in a full stadium for Alabama's home games this year?
Well, Matt, you just heard Greg Byrne there talking about how they are proceeding as if football season will go off as normal. And that's really all that they can do right now. And so much of this is going to be so regional, as you alluded to earlier on the show. I think the fascinating thing about all of it is that I was curious to see if they would have social distancing measures that they'd be discussing. And some of that is happening. One of the things that Greg Byrne is part of is the Football Oversight Committee. He was in a meeting yesterday with NCAA President Mark Emmert and some other coaches and ADs as well. And they are talking about social distancing in stadiums, maybe not having stadiums at full capacity. But as it relates specifically to Alabama, which, as we know, is a king in college football, they're just acting as if they're going to have the stadium at capacity and things are going to operate as normal, starting on time, all of these things. I'll reiterate the importance of having fans in the stadiums for college athletics and the viability of the financial aspect of all of this. That's so crucial. And if you even just look at Alabama alone, Matt, $95 million was the profit in 2019. That accounted for 60% of the athletics budget and the athletics money that was made in that year. So we're talking about the necessity of college football and the fans in attendance to make sure that all of this can continue to work for these universities and their athletic programs.
Talking about tailgating, season tickets, donors, everything that goes within the college football framework that perhaps we don't see in the NFL. You'd mentioned the regional aspect of this. This is going to vary between universities across the country, whether their states are open or not. What could impact the Pac-12's ability to have fans at their games this fall?
Well, that's really what we're kind of waiting to see. And, you know, the Pac-12 Commissioner Larry Scott was responding to something that was said by the Oregon governor just recently, saying that, look, he doesn't know exactly what anything's going to look like by the time September comes around. So trying to make any sort of determination in May or even in the coming months is going to be incredibly difficult. And I think when you look at the different regions around the country, some of this may end up having to be specific. You may see some of these conferences have some states that have teams that can play and others that don't. What I continue to hear, though, Matt, is that they wouldn't do this if there were only 3 teams in a conference, for instance, that could play football. They would try to see if they could get 8, the majority, even more than that, to play, and then try and see if there's a plan where revenue could be shared with some of the teams and the schools that could not play because of restrictions on their state. Maybe that applies to the Pac-12. Maybe it applies to the SEC. Maybe it applies to the ACC. Who knows? So much of this has to do with regional aspects around the country and how that will be handled.
Yeah, keeping an eye on Oregon. They host Ohio State on September 12th. Laura Rutledge has already been on Get Up. She's hosted First Take, and now she's been on SportsCenter.
Girl.
All before 1 p.m. Eastern. Laura Rutledge with us this morning. Laura,
So much fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
Get you a break, girl. The Bucs are going to get no break from primetime. I mean, we all knew that, right, with Tampa Bay. Here's what their schedule looks like. NFC South is certainly coming in hot. Brady makes his Tampa debut against Drew Brees and the Saints in Week 1. They also have a date in Week 9. Brees and Brady rank first, second all time in both passing yards, passing TDs. As far as a bye go, Brady's not going to get one until Week 13. That's actually a rarity because it's the latest bye week for a Tom Brady team since 2001. That season, the Patriots had their bye in Week 16, and the league clearly were like, it's a priority to put the Bucs under the lights. They're scheduled for 5 primetime games in 2020. It comes after Tampa played in a league-low 17 primetime games over the previous 15 seasons. Little added pressure. Bucs coach Bruce Arians loves the attention.
I love it. You know, I love the expectations and the excitement that brings. I think our players will enjoy it, and you know, as coaches, you have to embrace it and get ready for it. And you know, I think our guys are going to be really, really excited about the season.
So with the schedule release, Caesar Sportsbook posted odds for the Week 1 games. One of the biggest storylines is that Tampa Bay opens as an underdog in New Orleans. That means that Tom Brady's streak of 74 straight regular season games as a favorite will almost certainly come to an end. That is the longest streak in the Super Bowl era. Oh, I love it. We always love having Louis Riddick back with us. Hi, Lou. Okay, so Brady and the Bucs underdog, as we just mentioned there. When you look at Tampa Bay's schedule, what is the most challenging stretch for Brady and the Bucs?
Yeah, I think right out of the gate it's challenging. And when you look at it, look through those first 6 games, 4 of those games, Saints, Broncos, Bears, Packers, on the road against teams that can do what? They can rush the passer. They have elite pass rushers. And if there's one thing that people were worried about when Tom went down to Tampa Bay, it was, would he be able to be protected in Bruce Arians' offense that really emphasizes 5- and 7-step drops. Now, they're going to modify that, but the offensive line as well was something that was going to be a point of contention. They're going up against the likes of Cam Jordan, Von Miller, Bradley Chubb coming back, Khalil Mack, the Smith brothers, Preston and Zadarius Smith in Green Bay. So right out of the gate, Tom's going to be under some pressure, literally and figuratively, both. And then on top of it, when you look at these football teams, they have 2 division games right off the bat at New Orleans against the Panthers. They have teams that have really upgraded their offensive weaponry, like the Denver Broncos in particular. Well, this should be something you should be paying attention to with KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy. They're much faster. So they're going to be tested on both sides of the ball right out of the gate. 2 big division games, teams that can rush the passer on the road, crowd noise, if there are crowds, obviously, that could really affect how an offense can perform, and Tom Brady in particular. And look, with all the expectations for Tampa Bay to start fast, they started 2-6 last year. They don't want that this year. That's why they got Tom Brady. So look, there's a lot of expectations, and with those expectations comes a schedule that really is tough coming out of the gate. There's no wonder that Tampa Bay is really dominating the airways and dominating the headlines, rightfully so.
But you looked at the schedule, the Saints and Panthers alone among the top 3 in sacks last year. There's obviously going to be some really great matchups on Monday Night Football as well. So let's take a look at what we have on the schedule. You mentioned them, Denver. They'll host Tennessee on Monday night in Week 1. Recent history says the teams traveling to Mile High early on have struggled. In fact, Denver's 22-2 at home in Weeks 1 and 2 since 2000. It's just after that, And in week 2, the Las Vegas Raiders will make their regular season home debut against the Saints at Allegiant Stadium, where they've relocated after a 25-season run in Oakland. But perhaps the real excitement starts in week 3. We've got Mahomes Chiefs versus Lamar's Ravens. It'll be just the 3rd time the reigning MVP has faced the reigning Super Bowl champs on Monday night. And if you look at a few other of the notable games on Monday night, you've got Brady and the Bucs taking on the Giants at MetLife in week 8. Maybe the New Jersey will bring Brady a little luck against them. Week 12 sees a NFC wildcard rematch between the Seahawks and Eagles. And then 2 weeks later, we've got a divisional quarterback showdown of Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. So, Louis Riddick, the Monday night game you are most looking forward to?
Look, it's obviously week 3, Chiefs at Ravens. That's just a ridiculous matchup in terms of the star power starting at quarterback, the accomplishments of the head coach and Andy Reid and Coach Harbaugh, and then what they did to make their teams even better via free agency in the draft this year. You look at the Chiefs, the drafting of Clyde Edwards-Helaire may single-handedly make the Chiefs one of the most explosive offenses, if not the most explosive offense ever. This guy is like a Brian Westbrook type of asset for them in terms of Andy Reid and how he's going to use him out of the backfield in the passing game. And then when you look at the Ravens, look, they really fortified their run defense in free agency with Calais Campbell and Derek Wolfe up front on the defensive line. The drafting of Patrick Queen out of LSU is a slam dunk draft pick. On offense, they add a guy like J.K. Dobbins. I mean, Devin Duvernay out of Texas at wide receiver. So they've just got speed, size, strength to go against what is already a proven commodity in the Kansas City Chiefs. It doesn't get any better than that. And to be down in Baltimore, which is one of the most raucous places to play in the NFL, I played there as a player when I was with the Raiders. What a great atmosphere on Monday night, week 3. If you can get a ticket, be there. Maybe if you can call the game as an announcer, try and do that too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay. Is that foreshadowing? Or last year the Chiefs didn't have their best receiver, their best running back, or their starting left tackle. They eked out that win, but it was a rain-soaked afternoon, so hopefully the weather is good. Louis Riddick joining us here on SportsCenter, breaking down the best on the Monday Night Football slate.
Renowned sports executive Mike Storin died yesterday at the age of 84 from complications from cancer. Storin was commissioner of the ABA and led the league's charge to sign undergraduate college stars, in addition to several roles as a sports executive, which included the Pacers' merger into the NBA. Among his many key roles in an innovative-filled 4-decade career in sports, Storin was a founder and first general manager of the Pacers and GM of the Hawks. Storin is also the father of our own Hannah Storm, who called him larger than life, relentlessly positive, a fierce leader, and above all, her greatest supporter. Hannah credits her father with giving her the impetus to enter the world of sports broadcasting. Our thoughts and prayers with Hannah and her family as they mourn the loss of her father, Marine, Notre Dame grad, and sports fixture, Mike Storin.
Here's the deal. There's no replacing the real crisp.
Yo, Dad, come play some ball. You're not my dad.
I'm not your dad. Of course I'm your dad's son. If I wasn't your dad, would I be able to do this?
What are you doing?
I'm doing this. Make a swish. Uh-oh. Jake from State Farm.
Here's the deal. There's no replacing the real Chris Paul.
Not my car.
Just like there's no replacing State Farm.
Come on, man. Stop trying to be me.
If you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Professional Baseball League in Taiwan, where up to 1,000 fans can now attend the games, but they have to sit at least 3 seats apart, and every other row must be empty for proper social distancing amid the coronavirus pandemic. Yeah.
There's at least crowd noise.
Exactly. There's someone there.
All in.
Now we have your half-hour headlines.
We do. The Chiefs, per the norm for Super Bowl champions, will open the season at home as the NFL schedule is released against the Texans. But How about that NFC South? We get one of the most prolific quarterback matchups ever as the Bucs and Saints, Breeze and Brady, square off week one. Other quirks, we get a Friday game for the first time since 2009, a Christmas Day matchup between the Vikings and Saints. But the league, despite the on-schedule preparations, preaching flexibility in an unknown atmosphere.
The plan is to move forward as normal, to play a full season, a full schedule, until the medical community tells us otherwise. And that's been our approach from day one. Let's just make sure we're responsible, we're doing proper planning, but on a daily basis, because the things could change daily. Let's just make sure we're responsible. Any guidelines as it pertains to what the governor's orders are for the stay-home policies, let's just make sure that we're aligned, we're following those guidelines. And that's been the approach as we look at our virtual off-season, as we look and prepare for training camp and regular season. We're preparing as a league to play a full season.
It appears Colts quarterback Philip Rivers has his post-football plans. He has been named head coach in waiting at St. Michael Catholic High School in Fairhope, Alabama, whenever he decides to retire from the NFL. Rivers, who spent the first 16 years of his career with the Chargers, signed a $25 million deal this offseason with the Colts.
You think he had an interview?
Yes. I need to see your resume, sir, kindly.
So there were supposed to be 3 NBA teams opening up their practice facilities today. One of them was supposed to be Denver, but Adrian Wojnarowski just tweeted that they have pushed that back to Monday. Maybe that's because, according to the Denver Post, most of the Nuggets players aren't even in the city. But the Cavs and Trailblazers are opening their facilities today, and reportedly will only allow 1 player and a developmental coach wearing a mask and gloves to be permitted in the same basket. Here are some of the other requirements in terms of safety protocols. Players have to show up dressed for workouts because there will be no use of locker rooms, and only 4 players and 6 developmental coaches are allowed in the facility at a time. Coaches have to stay 12 feet away, and they have to wear a mask and gloves, and everyone that comes into the facility has to have their temperature checked.
The main event for UFC 249 Saturday night is now official in Jacksonville. The contenders, Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, both made weight today, 155 pounds. Co-main event competitors Henry Cejudo and challenger Dominic Cruz also made the 135-pound limit for their bantamweight title bout. Today is what, May 8th?
Today is May 8th.
2020.
2020, can confirm.
We know what we like to do.
What do we like to do?
We like to do on this days. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take it back, Peach Pit After Dark style, for this day on Sports.
Welcome into SportsCenter. It's May 8th, 1994. Alongside Matt Berry, I'm Elle Duncan. Atlanta, well known for being the epicenter of sports, and we guarantee you'll enjoy the lip flapping from down south.
You know, 24 years to the day, a hobbled Willis Reed led the Knicks to their first world title. However, the last 3 years, the Knicks, they've had a Michael Jordan problem. That is, until now, no more MJ, just Scotty and the Bulls. Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals. Knicks in the Garden, hosting the Bulls in transition. Scott Williams taking the Bulls on a fantastic voyage. Horace Grant, the finish. Bulls up 6 after the first quarter. Frustrating half for Ewing. Couldn't get it going. Then again, who can against Luke Longley? More Bulls defense. Armstrong, BJ to Pippen. Fakes, lay in. Bulls up 10 at the half. And it was a clear black night, a clear white moon. Warren G and BJ Armstrong trying to consume. Knicks, a 22-9 run, though. They would come back. Ewing would get it going. The beneficiary from John Starks. Charles Smith gets it, hits the long jumper. Knicks down 2. Pippen now posted up Starks. Turnaround bucket. His only basket in the last 12 attempts. Bulls by 4. Knicks come back. Starks, no good. Charles Oakley, the janitor, ties the game at 84. 1 minute left in the game. Tied at 86. Shot clock winding down. Pippen desperation heave. No good. Long rebound. A Mace. Down the court, the lay-in. The Knicks take their first lead of the quarter. 12 seconds left. Anthony's shot looks like it's nothing as the shot clock expires. Have another look. Phil Jackson wants a 24-second violation. Ball doesn't hit the rim, and the Knicks win 90-86. They get the lead 1-0. You know, it's amazing when Michael Jordan's not hanging around on the Bulls. It's a much different scenario. Ewing, 18 points, 12 rebounds. Stark, 17 points. Phil Jackson, what say you?
That call at the end of the game was very questionable. The whistle blew in the air. The players stopped playing. I think that there's some kind of call that could be made that's better than the option that came. When that whistle blows, I think you are supposed to stop play, and I think that the referees did overjump the play. And at that time, in that situation in the ball game, that was a terrible finish to have a game of that nature, with that intensity, with that much riding on it, with that kind of a score.
Tonight also featured a round one closeout game between the Hawks and Heat. Top-seeded Hawks have been anything but Hotlanta through the first four. But despite that, and the fact that 8 seeds beating 1s are the new trendy pick right now, Hawks center Kevin Willis doing something that most definitely did not fall on so-so deaf ears.
It's over. It's in my mind, in our mind. It's over with. Guaranteed. It's over with on Sunday.
Oh, man, they need to win this game or Kevin Willis will have to escape out the back door. First half, his teammates picked him up. Mookie Blaylock strips Glenn Rice in transition. Stacey Augmon, get up. Under 10 seconds left in the first half. Blaylock from way downtown. The pride of Atlanta, he's looking for the foul. Won't get it too bad, but the Hawks have a 10-point lead at the half. However, too close for comfort for them, so the Hawks tighten up their defense. It's like they saw the sign and they opened up their eyes. Fourth quarter, the Hawks are starting to pull away. Craig Elo make you jump, jump. And Kevin Willis.
Daddy will make you jump.
That's Kevin Willis. Blaylock deflects the pass, picks up the loose ball, gets it to Augmon for the slam, and the Hawks win 102-91, take the series 3-2. I wish that I could say that all the players came from far and wide, but just over 14,000 in attendance, meaning the Hawks haven't sold out a playoff game since 1988, but they do it with the guarantee from Willis off his 24 points. Blaylock's 13 points, 18 dimes, 8 rebounds, and 4 steals, and Atlanta will take on Indiana in the next round.
El, truly an ace of base. Now to golf. John Daly is the Pied Piper of the PGA Tour. Usually a marshal will follow a twosome throughout their round. Daly had as many as 14 following him over the weekend of the Bell South Classic in Atlanta. Now, this is proof that Daly is and will be golf's top star in the 90s and beyond. Held the lead going in. What about David Peoples? 1 stroke ahead by John Daly. Peoples, the putt. Oh, would bogey the hole, tied with Daly at 13 under. Nolan Henke, beautiful shot, 3rd hole on 18. Finished 13 under. He is tied with Peoples and Daly. 18th hole, 3rd shot. Peoples, finds the bunker. Then again, don't we all? And then John Daly, after a huge drive, black hole sun, won't you come and wash away the rain? It sure did. I'll tell you what, though, Brian Henniger, underrated, like Nat, owner of the Peach Pit, main proprietor. Henniger ties at 13 under. Daly, the putt, and wins the Bell South Classic, shooting a 14 under for the tournament. Henke and Henniger fall the stroke shorts.
Did you hear the fans? It was like a sound garden.
It was a sound garden full of love, full of laughter, as Daly first tour win since the 1992 BC Open.
I've felt some butterflies before, but I can't remember the last time I felt them like this. I didn't feel them like this at Crooked Stick at all. I've worked hard before I came back out, and I'm doing the right things that I'm supposed to do to have a chance to win. You know, I've won some tournaments that I probably shouldn't have, and I can honestly say this is the first tournament I won on the PGA Tour in a sober manner. So it's just a great feeling, and knowing that I can do it sober is even better.
John Daly, certainly on bended knee, after that win in the Bell South. Other things happening on May 8th, 1994. Charles Barkley and the Suns take a 1-0 lead on the Rockets. And in baseball, the Orioles behind the best arm in the game. You can't debate how dominant Ben McDonald is. Beat the Indians, Baltimore. It really set up to be a dynasty.
Certainly. It's like watching boys go to men.
That's
you
right.
know? Really
And when we go back to present day 2020, B.J. Armstrong is going to join us.
As for the original anchors of May 8th, 1994, hey, it doesn't get any bigger than the Big Show. Keith Olbermann, Dan Patrick. How about that?
That's a vintage Big Show.
Yeah.
Apparently, Taylor's didn't start until
your jacket was
now.
Spot on.
Sports arenas that normally play host to events are taking on a different role, hosting response centers to combat the COVID-19 virus. Ahead, one of those heroes joins us who's been doing that job.
What is that?
Now back with you on SportsCenter. So the Jaguars, in order to release their schedule, want to get creative, and they used cats.
What the hell's wrong with that cat?
This cat is nuts. Cats are kind of like this. Like, I don't think they had to do much editing. They're sort of weird and crazy.
The cats are a little narcissistic.
It's one way to describe them.
Still ahead, it's Friday, and we may not have sports, but we do have the not top 10 embarrassing turnovers. Sanchez, we're sorry, you're on there.
I'm sorry. And Jimmy G received nearly all the blame for the Niners Super Bowl loss. Stephen A is having none of that. He will put an end to this hotly debated topic. His animated reaction is forthcoming. But first, Outside the Lines on SportsCenter looks at the hero of the week. Here's Jeremy Schaff with more.
Not that long ago, we were lining up at their gates, decked out in team apparel, ready to tailgate. But now, 11 NFL stadiums have a very different function, along with more than 36 other sports arenas that typically play host to pro baseball, basketball, hockey, and tennis events. They've become temporary coronavirus response and testing centers. And much of the work reconfiguring these venues has been accomplished by our military. Our hero of the week is one of those soldiers who's been doing that job. As Tisha Thompson reports, she is both a member of the Maryland National Guard and an athlete.
This is not the typical environment that we would have our tents. The tents are normally in a more field environment, more for tactical operations. My name is Staff Sergeant Donita Adams, and I'm a member of the Maryland Army National Guard. We're helping the people in our community, and that's what the Guard is about.
A lifelong Redskins fan, Donita Adams never expected to see FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland, surrounded with Army tents.
FedEx Field is something big to us. It's the home of the Redskins, and where we all gather and just have a good time, cookout, tailgate, listen to music. Just a totally different atmosphere than what it was. Instead of being cheerful and happy and celebrating, we're being more concerned and cautious and making sure we look out for each other.
Stadiums and playing fields all around the world are now on the front lines of the coronavirus response. China, Brazil, Great Britain, India, Nigeria, and Australia. In the U.S., soldiers erecting testing centers at Miami's Hard Rock Stadium and Marlins Park, distributing food at Gillette Stadium in Massachusetts and the United Center in Chicago, and transforming field houses at Southern Connecticut State University, Detroit's TCF Center, and Seattle's CenturyLink Field into field hospitals.
A lot of people are losing loved ones right now. The uniform shows that we are willing to sacrifice our body, our health, anything for the greater good.
These are our citizen soldiers, who, if you look past the uniform, have stories to tell.
My dream was to play in the WNBA.
Adams played basketball at Division II Glenville State College.
Adams, yes!
Where she averaged 20 points per game her senior year.
I went to the tryout for LA Sparks. I made it to the final cut, but didn't actually make the final roster. You know, that hurt a 22-year-old at the time of, hey, your dreams of being in the WNBA has just been shattered. So, you know, for me, I just had to pick up the pieces and just find another avenue, and I did.
For Adams, that other avenue was joining the National Guard, where she became one of just 12 players on the military's international women's team.
Adams, again, she's got it.
Being an athlete and just applying that to the military it's like second nature. I just go out there and react and respond. So we learn a lot from sports. You learn a lot from basketball, and it's taken me all over the world.
This past fall, basketball took her to Wuhan, China, before the coronavirus first appeared there. 6 months later, that same virus has now put her basketball career on hold, as she and other soldiers mobilize to save lives.
Sometimes it's good. You got to go through something in order to be a stronger person. I think that's what we're going through. We're all going through this together, and we're going to come out of this stronger.
Our hero of the week, Donita Adams of the Maryland National Guard. Coming up later on SportsCenter, some thoughts about the meaning of moms in sports and beyond at this particular moment in time.
Still ahead, we may not have sports. We do have the Not Top 10 list on this Friday, and we will rank the most embarrassing turnovers of all time. Sorry, Mark Sanchez, just turn now.
He's counting down the 10 worst plays of the week on Not Top 10. Brought to you by Geico.
Going up.
Just taking a look at ESPN's lineup for the day. We've got another hour of SportsCenter with us, and then NFL Live at 3. You've got The Jump. 5, we'll preview UFC 249. That's tomorrow on ESPN and ESPN+. SportsCenter at 6 with the PTI guys joining later, and then we'll cap the day with SportsCenter at night with Zubin Mehenti and Steve Levy. That's at 11 Eastern. For now,
Keith Alderman here with the Not Top 10 most embarrassing turnovers of all time. Number 10, Plexico Burress. Rookie year, rookie star, rookie mistake. The ball was still live. That's a fumble. Could have been worse. Could have been a gun falling out of his pants. Number 9, Purvis Pasco picks a pass and travels with it. Instead of cinching victory over Colorado, that gives them the chance to win, which they now do. You'd think with a name like Pasco, we would have known about that. Number 8, premature jocularity. Kalen Clay of Utah, 79 yards till the end zone. 78 yards till he drops the ball in celebration. And while he's doing the "I'm the greatest, love me" dance, Oregon is running it back 100 yards for their touchdown. Number 7, even the greats can turn it over magnificently. Curry, Klay Thompson, not looking. Thompson to the ref, not looking. Number 6, the turnover first ballot Hall of Famer Leon Lett. In Super Bowl 27, Leon let the Bills keep him from making the Dallas blowout even worse. That one didn't really matter. But the Thanksgiving snow globe blocked field goal disaster, that mattered. This led to Miami's game-winning field goal. Number 5, an all-time threefer from Patrick Stephon of the Dallas Stars. On the empty net, loses control, loses his edge, passes to Jarrett Stoll of Edmonton, and the Oilers put the game-tying biscuit in the basket. Patrick Stephon was the first choice in the 1999 draft. Number 4, this almost cost the Dolphins their undefeated season turnover from Garo Yepremian. His field goal attempt, Super Bowl 7, blocked. It bounces back to him. He tries to pass it. Can't. Tries to bat it out of bounds. Can't. Touchdown, Washington. Number 3, to his credit, Mark Sanchez never legally changed his name to Mark Butt Fumble Sanchez, but he could have. 8 years ago now this is. Why he still gets all the blame, I don't know. I mean, the butt in the butt fumble is Brandon Moore's butt. Number 2. Yeah, you saw this one coming. NCAA title game, Michigan down by 2 to Carolina. Chris Webber calls a timeout. They don't have any timeouts. That's a technical. Carolina wins. And forever, anytime something gets delayed in his life, somebody could say, oh, good, that means Chris doesn't have to call a timeout he doesn't have. And number 1, the miracle at the Meadowlands. Yeah, Joe Pisarcik, Herman Edwards, you know this. What you don't know, my college history professor was a Giants fan who had warned us he would be grading all of our tests and papers after watching the Giants games.